Welcome, Mickey. It's great to have you here with us today. Uh, really excited for this conversation. Let's have you start out by just telling the audience a bit about your background, how you got into the space, and then ultimately what led you to launch CWM Strategies.
Yeah, well, first off, Jeremy, thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be your guest, and it's fun to be on this side of the microphone. So again, appreciate that. Yeah, so Mickey Pelletier, I've been in the industry 18, 19 years. I sort of pride myself on working on the MSP side, on the tech side, on the pure consulting side, and then on the client side. I started back in the day with Allegis Group and did a lot of operations and implementation and traveled the globe
Mm-hmm.
with them and really got my first experience in the space and had a really good time with them. And spent some time over at SAP right around the time they were making their big acquisitions of Success Factors and Ariba and Fieldglass. And spent some time back on the MSP side over at Kelly OCG and really enjoyed my time with them, traveling, implementing MSP and VMS solutions. And then made a jump over to the consulting side over at Accenture, which was unique. It's just a different business model and the things that they're doing and contingent workforce being just a small little piece of a much bigger puzzle there. And that was great, doing anything they could get their hands on, from implementing solutions, helping with governance, all sorts of things. And then joined the client side. I was the head of contingent workforce at Zillow for a little bit, and that was great to have that experience. And then I got recruited by Meta, and that was a really big deal to go over to them. It was their
Just a
head of
little
contingent.
program, I'm sure, huh?
Yeah, right. And it was their head of strategy for contingent workforce, and that was really great. And the wind was beneath my sails, and I was cruising, and then I got laid off. And
Oh,
so um, I, after being laid off, struggled to find a role that really met my needs and where I wanted to be. And after some pushing and nudging from some really good peers and good friends, I went out on my own and started CWM Strategies. When I was with Accenture, I started seeing, what I was charging and what I was doing, and said, boy, I could probably do this a lot more affordably under my own, sort of guidance. And then it was never, the idea of going out on your own was just too big. How do you do that? And
yeah.
suddenly, when you don't have a job, you're not forced into it, but the motivation's a little bit stronger. And so since then, I've been doing that.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's when I talk to people in our industry, it's always a fascination of mine to figure out how they got into it and what the path has been, and not many people say I really wanted to get into the CW space as a kid, right?
There's no degree for it. There's some sort
Right.
of certifications out there for it, I guess, but there's nothing officially that you go to school for. And people fall into it, and they don't often come out. There's a few people you meet that have
Right.
left the industry, but once you're in, you may be in for life, and
Yeah.
I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're going to talk about all things contingent workforce, and one of the things I'm interested in hearing more about is this concept of being a CW simplifier, and you kind of leading that charge of being a CW simplifier. What does that really mean in practice, and why is simplification so badly needed right now?
Yeah, I think the idea of simplification is we live and work in a space that it makes sense to us because we've been living and breathing it. Like we said, once you're in, and you become part of that ecosystem, you become part of the jargon, and you get it and you understand it. But to the average person that is on the outside, they don't necessarily understand it. They don't understand our speak. And we have these concepts that have evolved over time, that I think we have sort of a cyclical nature. We do one thing, it doesn't work out well, we go away from it for 5 years, the tech improves, we twist the wording, we add a little something special to it, and it's now an evolved solution that didn't exist before. And I think we're seeing advances with that in AI. So the whole idea of simplification, I mean, for me, it's, hey, how do we take this sort of nuanced thing and bring that back to maybe a more relative and practical approach to things? I mean, the one question you'll hear a lot in our space, and and I use often is what's the problem we're trying to solve,
Yeah.
right? It's a pretty basic thing. And in our space, well, we're trying to deploy the right talent to the right role, and meet the needs of the company. And we've complicated that to these complex things of different classifications, different treatment of classifications, and usage, and different ways of billing, and we have these different terms that there's 6 different things, but they all mean the same thing. And
Yeah.
all of that's good, and I think it's needed because there's ways of breaking down and categorizing work, but it becomes very complex. So I like to pride myself on being able to simplify that and bring these abstract concepts to clients and talk it through with them. And I mean, I one thing I do a lot with my marketing is I use memes, and memes are sort of a fun sort of like culturally unique way of tying this very abstract concept into something more meaningful and packing that into something you look at and say, huh, and it makes sense, right? Because you can relate. So, I mean, that's one thing I try to do. And I think being able to bring simplicity to our space is desperately needed because we're a niche little thing in this greater workforce management ecosystem, right? But we're one of the biggest ways of deploying and managing talent that doesn't really get the love it deserves. So let's not make it too complex. Let's try to make that as simple as possible.
Yeah, makes sense. And I think that's one of the big things Steve Jobs really brought into Apple was the whole concept of simplistic design and how hard that is though. Uh, it's difficult to make it simple and design programs simply and efficiently and things like that.
I always call it the nuance and nonsense, which is the world that we live in. There's so
I
much
like it.
nuance of these odd terms and then these deep sort of ways that operations work of deploying and managing talent, and then how we tie that in with an MSP or a VMS or an internally managed program. And oh wait, you got independent contractors in the mix. You got to think differently about how you're managing that. And then there's just general nonsense that we all experience, pushback from leadership, the inability to make decisions, the asking of the wrong questions. And it's just part of the nature of business, I think, regardless of industry, but we make it sort of our own nonsense, specific to the
Hmm.
contingent workforce industry. And I think
Yeah.
all of us are battling through that nuance and nonsense to make it simple, to make it right for our clients. So it is just a easy and meaningful experience for the managers, the suppliers, the talent, the managers, everybody involved.
Yeah, that's great. Now you worked with enterprises, but you also work with providers like Horizontal on their go-to-market strategies and content. And I'm curious, what makes CW content work today? And yeah, I guess it's a two-part question. What's the worst thing that you keep seeing, or what are companies doing wrong in that space?
Yeah, and I don't want to like degrade or say anybody's doing wrong because I think we're all trying to figure it out. We want to have our voice. I think what happens is, and it sounds the use of AI, I think, is great because I could, have 1,000 word thing written for me in a matter of seconds, but the authenticity of it is what goes
Hmm.
away. And I think that sometimes gets lost in the messaging because you could go to your Claude or your Chat GPT and it can write up something pretty nice and have some cool wording for it, but is it really yours? And I think people are starting to read through and see through the stuff that is written. And there's a lot of content out there, and a lot of it is, how do you differentiate yourself? I think of that a lot in the staffing space. There's
Hmm.
between 20, 30,000 staffing suppliers in America, depending on whose research you're reading. There's only so many ways to deploy talent, and there's only so
Yeah.
many companies receiving talent. So how are you any different than anybody else? And I think that's a thing we struggle with. Not that it's anybody's fault, but it's with a saturation like that, differentiation is hard to come by. So a lot of it is you're trying to find the right words that are most meaningful to people. And um, again, when you think about content, there's so many things you could do with. I think LinkedIn is sort of our go-to. Let's be honest, YouTube and TikTok don't have the largest following for contingent workforce hashtags these
Right.
days, and that's perfectly fine. But when we think about LinkedIn, there's only so many ways to get your message out. I mean, I think the more popular ones we see are seeing a lot more of like carousels, these 8 sort of slide things that talk about your concept, your business, this thing that you're trying to push through. We see a lot of video content, which I think is great because sometimes you could just put it on, have it in the background, listen to the audio, or you could tune in. Same thing with podcasts. And then we see a lot of infographics, sort of these one image things that talk about whatever concept you're trying to portray. And then um, there's only so many ways to market yourself. And I think the creativity is there, but how are you doing things again differently than anyone else? And I feel like I'm always looking to find that answer. And you try new things. Some days the algorithm loves you, other days it doesn't. You try to find stuff that lands and it's going to resonate in a way that people say, you know what, I thought about them, and we should, let's talk to them. They mentioned something about that recently, right? So it's, I think, a matter of staying relevant, top of mind, but also having a message that rings true while being authentic at the same time. I'm not saying don't use AI. Use AI, it's going to speed things up, but make sure you tailor it to be your voice and reads
Yeah.
true like you yourself wrote it.
Yeah, I mean, the art of storytelling is really something that the humans thrive at. And AI, can certainly do a good framework and things like that. But putting the story together with authenticity is more of a strength of humans than AI for sure at this point.
Right, and we long to be creative as people. I mean, I think the
Hmm.
older we get, maybe the more that goes away. And I look at my children and the creativity and the things they come up with that just, where did you hear that? Where did you come up
Yeah.
with that? And I think as we get older too, and our companies mature, we want to hone in on maybe one sophisticated way of doing business that does it take away from the creativity? I don't know, that's for those interpreting the message to determine, but I think that's something we're always longing to do.
Yeah, that makes sense. We mentioned authenticity, and I know you talked about using humor as well. Do you feel like CW leaders are afraid to show personality and let that kind of really come through in their messaging and communications?
I think that's a really good question. And I've had companies that I was talking with that were like, "Hey, yeah, we'd like to maybe do some stuff with you." And then a month later they come back and say, "Hey, you know what? We do want more of a sophisticated, reserved message. We don't necessarily want to use humor or anything." And
Yeah,
hey, totally appreciate that. And
yeah,
it's not like it has to be humorous. I mean, I think it's one thing to poke at ourselves, poke at our industry, and make light of things because it's not always this uptight thing that that makes it so stuffy, right? At the end of the day, we're just people trying to make enough money to feed our family, to go on a vacation and do things and have some fun with it and be able to poke at that nuance and nonsense. So I think for leaders themselves, going back to your question, I think it's fine. Would everybody else do that? I mean, you think of um, one of the big commercials that Apple put out in 1984 when they premiered Macintosh, and it was this weird sort of, it was a very weird commercial, but Steve Jobs really pushed it forward, and it aired during the Super Bowl. I don't think I was born yet, but I had seen it during a presentation the other day, and it was like, wow, that was creative, but boy, they were really putting their necks out on the line, putting something like this out there. It
yeah,
wasn't a humorous thing, but I relate it back to your question as, you have to put something out there, whether it's humorous or terribly creative. It just needs to be you, even if it's
yeah.
not this big flashy thing. Just, I don't know, Jeremy, I think of you getting out here doing this, doing a podcast and speaking with people. It shows who you are, and I think that's a big deal to customers because we're just people, and it's about relation. You're not this buttoned up stuffy guy. You're someone who likes to just chat and learn and have fun with it along the way. Whether you use humor, I think is fine, but you have to find your own voice and what works for you and your comfort level.
Yeah, that's very well said, and for sure, I try to really lead with, we need to have some fun along the way. And yes, we're professional. Yes, we're polished. Yes, we do great work, but we need to have some fun along the way and have it be an enjoyable experience. Otherwise, we all put in too many hours for it to be like, I gotta be somebody else, for that time and not let that our inner self show through. So yeah, I think it's important.
I kind of wanted to flip the script on you here
Yeah.
because, you know, it's one thing for me to run like a one person company, right? And you talk about being a leader. I mean, how is that, you know, running a company with, you know, hundreds of people? You know, like I said, I run a one person company, you run 100 plus. Like, I'd like to hear from leaders like with that level of headcount, you know, what do you need to do? What do you think through? How do you start your day? Because it's a whole different operation, I have to imagine.
Yeah, I mean, that's really the why for me, when, of course, it's your family, providing for them. But,
Yeah.
I look at that everyone on the team, across the globe, and I'm responsible for helping them achieve success and good lives for them and their families. So that's where there's certainly some stress and pressure, and why you have to take it seriously and why you have to, come to work every day with focus and purpose. But that's a good thing. As far as how I approach my days or weeks, I think you want to, it's going to change. Priorities are going to change all the time, and you get that whack-a-mole sometimes where it's like, I was
Oh
doing
yeah.
this, now I got to do this, now something pops up here, or a client pitch comes up here, or opportunity. You hope it's more of the good things than the fires you have to stamp out. But kind of what brings me back to center generally is, the vision for the company and the strategic plan that we set out for at the start of the year, and put a lot of work into the strategic plan going into a new year. And that really, you want to have that be simple and clear, and have core themes. So then as you get to your days and weeks, you keep coming back to that, and are we on the right track? How are we progressing towards these goals? How are we progressing towards the vision? And do we need to make changes on the fly? And we're certainly in that mode right now, with a lot of change and transformation. But, a typical day, I always kind of start and end my day in the metrics of the business,
Mm.
and looking at just all the different KPIs in a dashboard, different dashboards, and just so I know how we're performing. That way you can hopefully detect early, if we need to make some adjustments really to capitalize on the business opportunities at hand. But then it's a combination of meeting with leadership, meeting with our employees and team members, customers, and just making sure that our employees are feeling good and well informed, and are feeling supported, because if they are, then generally they're giving really good customer service to our clients. But try to stay. Yeah, I guess I bounce up and down between vision and strategic plan, and staying in the game enough and close to the frontline operations enough to know that I'm in tune with what's really happening. You don't want to be that person calling from out on high, like, hey, we got to do these things, and it's not what the customer wants, it's not what the employee wants. So it's striking that balance.
There's a lot of obviously proactive measures, but then reactive things you're having to do as well. And you talk
For
about
sure.
the general pivots that just come out of nowhere. Um,
Yes.
so I could appreciate that, and that's actually some good advice for me, even just as a one person company in terms of how I'm thinking about my day and whatnot. So I'm glad you shared that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we can't have a podcast without really talking about AI. I feel like AI is everywhere, and I'm sure it's coming in meaningful ways into the CW space. Um, how are you looking at AI? How are you applying it? Are you to the point where you're seeing real world implications and benefits that are coming from AI in the space?
Yeah, I think that it's coming along. I think depending on who you talk to, the application of it is varied. I think in contingent workforce, we're seeing steady use cases of it in early in the talent acquisition process when it comes to resume screening, interviewing, job matching, sourcing, things like that. I know there's still questions around efficacy and governance
Yeah.
and how that all works and bias. But I know we're applying it that well. I'm really curious to see, is it improving? Is it really making things better? I mean, we hear stories of companies that were able to sift through thousands of resumes in seconds. Well, did you still get the best candidates? And to
Right.
compare that to manual recruiter intervention and going through would be a nice exercise, but as everybody's trying to save money, I don't know that we're necessarily doing these apples to apples comparisons and experiments. What I'm really curious is about some of the more of the downstream implications of AI and where it ties into SOWs and services work there, because there's a lot of tasks that go on that I think we're starting to see. I hear stories about companies that are building cool things and doing fun things, I guess you could say, with the AI technology around services procurement and the services management space. I think a lot of where we're going is this it's all about automation. That's the pure thing of AI, automating these entire end-to-end processes. So I click one or two buttons and everything's pretty much done. Whether I had an AI agent go in and do a lot of this work for me, or it was just a simple automation of a basic task that isn't necessarily this complex AI, but it's just an automated process that we've learned over the past 27 years doesn't require this manual intervention that we had thought. Now, in terms of my own application and as a consultant, I don't know that I could do all that I'm doing of my job without AI as well.
Yeah.
In terms of helping me think through content, think through decisions, help me analyze data that's going that needs to be reviewed. I mean, I think it goes a long way there, and I'm excited as things continue to evolve of where it will go. I know with the tech startup I'm a part of, EmberPath, I mean, a lot of what we're looking at is the orchestration of agents amongst the life cycle of talent acquisition, whether you're a temp contractor or an FTE employee. You're a manager that has a need. How do you get through that entire end-to-end process, and how is that automated, and how is that orchestrated along the way? Those are the problems that we're trying to solve, and we've been doing some fun testing that I keep on saying fun, like AI really amps me up, I guess. But we're seeing some really cool progressive things going on there and getting some really good feedback from folks that are going into the tool and playing with it. So I think, Jeremy, if you ask me where this question 3-5 years from now, it's going to be completely different. There are so many things going on with AI that are going to change the game. I guess you could say that we don't even know what it's going to be in 5 years. And that's incredibly exciting, but also a little bit scary because you think about job displacement and there's
Yeah.
mixed signals on where that really sits. You see a lot of stories that go with that, but then you hear other stories where maybe it's not as bad, and we just don't know, and we're taking it month by month as data comes in. So I think we could probably do a whole episode just on AI. But yeah, to your
Yeah.
point, you can't go a show without talking about it and getting people's opinions on it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we know it's here. We know it's powerful. We're learning how to apply it to our businesses. And I think the key is just to have a innovative mindset, be very, I guess, aggressive about understanding what it can do, and how it can help help your company or your team members be as efficient and productive as possible. Um, and yeah, it's pretty amazing. I love where it's going, but also am worried about the future for for people coming out of college and, new grads and
Entry level is a big, I don't want to say
entry
it is
level.
a crisis, but yeah, I mean, there's an article I was just reading that talks about it being a crisis for entry level and what that means. I mean, I think the entry point, an entry level person is augmented with AI, and they're coming at it like a mid level now because
Yes.
that's where productivity lies, and that is
Right.
now the baseline. That is the new entry level. And I think we're going to go through a shift in how we categorize jobs and leveling because they're going to be augmented by AI. And I think that's something we'll see sooner than later. And I wanted to commend you guys. And Jeremy didn't pay me to say this, but you guys are doing some pretty progressive things with AI. And I wanted to commend you on that because that's very cool because not all companies are. And as I came in and was looking at stuff, I was like, oh, you're doing really well. So I wanted to I want to tell that to you, and I guess now's the time.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, I've been in this industry 30 years and it's the staffing industry specifically has been a very inefficient business. You're relying on a job description that is often a very poor representation of what the role entails and what someone needs to be successful, and a resume, which is very similar. It's not a great indication of what a person, a candidate can deliver. And so you're starting with two big inefficient points, and then you're taking it through a manual process of submitting and reviewing and scheduling interviews and all of
Right.
that stuff. AI gives us the ability to really question everything and turn everything on its head. And really, there's I think, a great opportunity to use AI and automation for what it's good for, um, and use it as an accelerator. It excels at speed, scale, objectivity, but humans excel at empathy, judgment, nuance,
Right.
storytelling. And so I'm a big believer in the whole human in the loop process. That's a
Yep.
collaborative approach. But if it's done well, the productivity improvement, and I think the job satisfaction of the worker goes way up because they're not doing data-driven, manual, mundane tasks. They're focusing on high value tasks that are more interesting and more stimulating and challenging. And so, yeah, there's a great opportunity here, and I think the best outcomes come from the combination of the technology and the human interacting, and really excited about it.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, that's definitely where it's going. I think just with anything AI, you got to tie it back to a problem that you're solving. Don't just throw AI at it because you want to throw AI at it.
Right.
I mean, I think that's a big thing we really need to consider when we're going through the process of evaluating should something be automated. Well, is it really solving a problem or is it going to complicate things? So as long as it's really solving a problem,
Yeah.
that's the biggest thing. Just be smart about it.
Yes, absolutely. Um, so just kind of looking ahead over the next 3 to 5 years. I know as we talk about AI, it's really difficult to look that far out, but what are you seeing as kind of the main, not necessarily, could be pain points or problems that you see the CW programs trying to solve for, or really what they're focusing on here in over the next couple of years?
The one thing I always go back to is the prioritization of contingent workforce, not as necessarily a program, but as a function. You think of some of these companies that upwards of 50% of their workforce is non-employee contingent talent. Well, you need some good resources that are managing that and handling that to ensure a proper experience across the board for your managers, your suppliers, and most importantly, the candidates. Our entire industry rides on the backs of people that are deployed to work. So the candidate experience, I think, always needs to be number one, obviously keeping everybody else's experience in mind.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, I mean, I think it's always going to be a battle for contingent workforce program owners to prioritize the function that they play within their own within their own companies. And we see some companies do that better than others. We see some companies that hire somebody, they build up a program, they get their MSP, VMS in the door, and then they let the contingent workforce program owner go. And it's, yeah, the
Yeah.
MSP is going to do great, the VMS will do great, but boy, you need somebody to really strategically think about this, to continue to champion this program and educate all of the users and leadership that have opinions on how the program should go and operate. It's a very niche skill set that we all have to speak about our industry and be knowledgeable on its use case in the greater realm of workforce management, right? And so I think contingent workforce owners, as they continue to be advocates, I mean, that is one of their big jobs, while trying to distill down education and knowledge of how things could be, and then tying that to the rest of the workforce management experience, which I think ties into the big ugly thing of total talent management, right? That we all talk about. I think we're
Yeah.
continuing to push towards that. More companies are interested in that, but the way they're approaching that, it has to be obviously very holistic, and I think requires the minds and skill sets of contingent workforce owners, because you have this other, up to half of a population of non-employee talent that really needs to be factored into the processes of talent engagement. I think the other shift is obviously AI. That's a given. We don't even need to say it because it's just a given. I
Mm-hmm.
think the other thing is a shift to skills-based focused in terms of the
Yeah.
hiring and engagement of talent, and the transferability, the transferness, whatever you want to call it, of these skills, because that ties into talent mobility and talent retention. And hey, yeah, your assignment's over, but we actually have something very similar using these skills that you have, even though the job title is somewhat different and may not align directly with the work you were just doing there. And I think through the use of AI and the programs that are being put in place, I think that stuff can come a little bit more naturally. And I know we're sort of limited on time, but there's the whole bunch of things that I think where the industry is going. You're looking at a focus on services and direct sourcing, a lot of the
Mm-hmm.
buzzwords we've heard, but continuing to augment those in a way so it's more accessible and meaningful for clients to use in a sophisticated way for them.
That's great. Thank you. And really, yeah, I think you touched on a lot of those things. And to your point, we could probably spend another hour talking about it. But if you're going to kind of boil it down to, the contingent workforce leaders out there, a piece of advice or a key takeaway on, something that they should be considering, thinking about, talking to you about, what would that be?
Yeah, geez, that's the $1 million question. Because I think um, having sat in that seat and then advising in that seat and working with those people, um, yeah, I think one of the important things is continuing to go to their network, go to their consultants, go to their partners, with an open mind. Not that they're not, but more from a relativity standpoint, and relating to things that are going on in the industry and keeping up with them, and leveraging them for skills and services and input. Because it could be fairly isolating running some of these programs, particularly when you are a 1, 2, 3 person shop, right? So I think being able to access your network and continue to stay in touch with what's going on, and knowing that the journey is long. It's a very long journey in maturing your program, and it doesn't necessarily matter what anybody else and everybody else is doing. It's about what's right for you at this time. But being able to have access to leaders and folks outside of your particular business could be incredibly insightful for ensuring that you're not crazy, and that the path you're going on is fine, and offer maybe some tips and tricks that could be of benefit to you in that journey.
That's great advice. Well,
I hope so. We'll see.
no, that's great. I think being aware of what's happening around you and having access to that information, but focusing on what's right for your business, I think it's really important. I think it's one of the things we're learning through the transformations that we're doing is a lot of times there's no perfect solution that you just plug in. You have to, again, kind of, what are we trying to solve for? What's available to us from a solution perspective? Do we need to build something? Try it, and then you're probably going to have to do a lot of iterations to make it work best for you. But there's a lot that can be done right now through AI and just emerging technology. And the landscape is changing so quickly with how customers want to operate and the ultimate needs of the hiring managers and the teams that are responsible for getting work done. And I think one of the things that we've seen is just it's a lot less black and white, where historically it's been kind of the staff aug and SOW, and we're seeing a lot more of this blended in the middle, these team solutions and things like that, and really trying to understand what's going to get the job done the best way and help enable that to happen. So it's an exciting time for sure.
It is. It's a great industry to be in, and it's fun to see it evolve every year, every day, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Mickey, thank you so much for joining me today. I thought this was a really valuable conversation. To everyone listening, stay tuned for more episodes of Launch Point, where we'll continue exploring the strategies, trends, and people shaping the future of business. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please follow and rate the podcast wherever you're listening, and definitely connect with both Mickey and me on LinkedIn. We'd love to keep the conversation going. Thanks, Mickey.
Thanks for having me. This was great, Jeremy.